Welcome back, guys. We're back with part 61 of the Time Chamber series. If you're a fan, let's aim for at least 400 likes on this episode. Trust me, you won't want to miss it. This one's going to be explosive. So, without further ado, let's jump right in. Campari clenched his fists tightly, his jaw set with determination as he launched a rapid series of attacks towards Abaddon. Each punch and kick carried the weight of his fury, but Abaddon merely deflected them with a smug smile, as if swatting away flies. The battlefield crackled with tension, the air thick with the clashing of energy. "We eradicated your entire race once before," Campari spat, his eyes burning with a fierce resolve. "We can easily do it again." His voice rang out, filled with the conviction of a warrior who had faced countless battles. Without missing a beat, Konik joined the fray, his movements precise and relentless. He attacked with the speed and accuracy only an angel could possess, each strike aimed at bringing down the monstrous foe before them. "In the name of Grand Zeno, we will stop you." Konik's voice was a clarion call of justice, echoing across the chaotic battlefield. But Abaddon remained unfazed. His laughter, dark and malevolent, echoed like a sinister melody, chilling the very souls of those who heard it. With a single motion, he unleashed a devastating blast of dark energy. The power of the attack was overwhelming, and Campari found himself unable to evade in time. The energy struck him squarely in the chest, and for a moment, time seemed to stand still. Campari's eyes widened in shock, the pain of the attack overwhelming him. The dark energy began to consume him, his body disintegrating into nothingness before Konik's horrified eyes. "No, Campari!" Konik's scream tore through the air, filled with anguish as he watched his comrade vanish before him. Abaddon sneered, the corners of his mouth twisting into a cruel smile. "That is the power of the true wielder of Hakai," he gloated, his voice dripping with arrogance. The demons surrounding him, lower in rank but still terrifying, watched in awe as their leader demonstrated his unrivaled power. At the top of their hierarchy stood the primordial demon gods, the highest monarchs of the demon race. Their mastery over destruction energy was absolute, capable of drawing out the full, devastating potential of Hakai energy, so potent it could obliterate even the souls of angels. "And don't forget," Abaddon continued, his voice taunting, "just like the demon god Arak, we primordial demon gods possess the power of dark siphoning." He paused, relishing the fear in Konik's eyes. "The more you hit us, the stronger we become. We siphon your divine energy, draining your strength while we grow more powerful." The angels had been aware of this ability, yet they had still underestimated the sheer power that the demon gods had amassed. In the past, the demons were formidable, but nothing compared to the force they faced now. It was a mystery how they had grown so strong, especially when they were supposed to weaken the longer they remained in the prison realm. This miscalculation had just cost another angel his life, and the realization weighed heavily on Konik. Abaddon's laughter grew louder, more sinister, echoing through the battlefield like a death knell. "One down, who's next?" His eyes gleamed with a sadistic hunger as he scanned the battlefield for his next victim. Meanwhile, inside the dome, Bulma worked frantically at her control panel. Her fingers flew over the keys with practiced precision as she desperately tried to stabilize the planet's core. Sweat dripped down her forehead, a testament to the intense pressure she was under. The situation was dire. If the planet's core collapsed, everything they had fought for would be lost. "We have to stabilize the core," Bulma muttered to herself, her voice strained with tension. Every second counted, and the fate of the entire planet rested on her shoulders. Beside her, Chilai stood, her face etched with worry for Broly and the others battling outside. The tension in the room escalated when the dome's entrance suddenly hissed open. Bulma and Chilai turned to see Frieza stepping inside, his presence commanding despite the visible injuries that marred his body. The two women exchanged a glance of surprise and apprehension, unsure of what to expect from the unpredictable tyrant. "Frieza," Bulma began, her voice laced with caution, "what are you doing here?" Frieza's cold eyes narrowed, and his tone was nothing short of venomous. "Shut your mouth, woman," he snapped, his voice carrying a dangerous edge. "I'm not here for idle chatter. I need a ship immediately. Fail to comply, and I'll blow this entire dome to smithereens, killing everyone inside." Bulma's heart pounded in her chest, but she knew better than to hesitate. With swift movements, she grabbed a small capsule from her pocket and tossed it to Frieza. "Here," she said, her voice steady despite the fear gnawing at her insides. "This capsule contains a ship that can traverse the entire universe. Just press the button, and it's ready to go." Frieza caught the capsule with a smirk, his eyes glinting with satisfaction. "Wise choice," he remarked, already turning to leave. The threat of his wrath hung in the air, a stark reminder of the perilous situation they all found themselves in. Frieza examined the capsule in his hand with a smirk, his golden eyes gleaming with interest. What fascinating technology, he mused aloud, turning the small object over in his fingers. A ship of such size contained within this tiny capsule. Quite convenient, indeed. His curiosity sated, Frieza's attention drifted away from Bulma and Chilai. He had no more use for the humans and quickly lost interest in them. Without another word, he shot off into the sky, his mission clear in his mind. Beerus needed him, and time was running out. The god of destruction was in a dire state. Stripped of 98% of his divinity by the angel Conic, Beerus had been rendered mortal. His once immortal body was now vulnerable, his life force slowly draining away. The only way to restore his godly powers was to relink his life force with Shin, the supreme Kai of Universe 7. But this had to happen quickly. Beerus's mortal body had begun to age at an accelerated rate. If they couldn't reconnect his life force with Shin soon, Beerus would perish within a week. But there was a massive obstacle standing in their way, one they hadn't fully considered. Conic's impenetrable domain expansion, a dark and twisted field of energy, surrounded the entire planet of Earth. Escaping it was impossible, even for beings as powerful as Frieza and Beerus. Suddenly, like a meteor from the heavens, Broly descended from the sky. The ground shook with his arrival, the force of his landing sending shockwaves across the battlefield. He was already transformed, his body radiating the immense power of his legendary Super Saiyan form. His green aura blazed around him, wild and untamed, matching the fury that burned in his heart. Broly's fists clenched as he took in the sight of Conic's domain, the dark energy swirling around the planet like a malevolent storm. Without hesitation, he charged at the barrier, his fist cocked back, ready to strike with all the power he could muster. His mind was singularly focused, driven by one overwhelming desire: revenge. When Broly's fist collided with the domain, the impact was cataclysmic. The sky itself seemed to crack as his power surged, a shockwave of energy rippling outward. Conic's impenetrable barrier trembled under the force of the blow, and for the first time, it began to fracture. Broly's rage had been simmering ever since Goku had told him the truth about his father's death. Paragus had been killed by Frieza's hand, and Broly had vowed to make the tyrant pay. Goku had helped Broly learn to control his legendary Super Saiyan form by teaching him to channel all his fury toward one target, Frieza. And now, Frieza was right there on Earth, within Broly's reach. Rage surged through Broly like a tidal wave, pushing his power to new heights. His muscles bulged, and his aura flared brighter, more intense. He could sense Frieza's presence, surrounded by the dark energy of Conic's domain. It only fueled his anger further. Inside the barrier, Conic's eyes widened in shock. "What is that?" he shouted, his attention suddenly drawn away from his battle with Abaddon. The angel's focus shifted as he sensed the immense power radiating from the outside, the sheer force of it causing cracks to spread rapidly across his domain. Even Abaddon paused, his dark, calculating mind momentarily thrown off balance. He could feel the raw, untamed power emanating from the being outside the domain. It was unlike anything he had ever encountered. "More powerful warriors keep appearing," Abaddon muttered, a mixture of curiosity and annoyance in his voice. "How much has this multiverse changed in our absence? That creature outside isn't even a god, yet he possesses energy that could rival a divine being." A slow, sinister smile crept across Abaddon's face as the thought of facing such a powerful opponent began to excite him. He relished the idea of testing his strength against this mysterious warrior. The cracks in Conic's domain grew larger, spreading like a spider web across the sky. The energy within the barrier began to warp and twist, unable to contain the force pressing against it. Sparks of electricity flashed across the universe, a sign of the phenomenal power struggle taking place. For the second time that day, an angel found themselves being overpowered by a mortal. Conic's domain expansion, which had seemed unbreakable just moments ago, suddenly shattered into a million fragments as if the very fabric of time had ripped apart and stitched itself back together. The once impenetrable barrier crumbled, and Broly, seething with fury, descended from the sky like a meteor crashing to Earth. His eyes were wild, blank white orbs reflecting the uncontrollable rage surging through his body. The ground trembled beneath his feet as his raw energy pulsed outward, shaking the very earth itself. Broly was beyond furious. His breathing was ragged, his chest heaving with each breath as his anger threatened to consume him entirely. His power had spiked to unimaginable levels, and his thoughts were a chaotic storm of revenge and fury. As he scanned the battlefield, his gaze locked onto Frieza, the one who had taken everything from him. The very sight of the tyrant sent a fresh wave of rage coursing through his veins, and Broly prepared to launch himself at Frieza, ready to tear him apart. But something unexpected happened. Just as Broly was about to charge, his body suddenly froze, his muscles tensed, and he fell to his knees, clutching his head in pain. He let out a guttural roar, trying to fight against the overwhelming anger threatening to consume him. And then, through the haze of his fury, a voice echoed in his mind, a voice he recognized. Broly, the voice of Yamoshi, his mentor and guide, spoke with a calm authority. Remember, controlling your rage is the key. Do not let it consume you. You must be the one to consume it. Until you can master this, there will be no one in the universe who can stand against you. Yamoshi's words cut through the fog of Broly's rage like a beacon of light. Slowly, Broly began to regain control. His breathing steadied, and the wild energy around him started to calm. He blinked, his vision clearing as he looked around, realizing where he was. Did I just lose control? Broly muttered to himself, his voice shaky with disbelief. I thought I had conquered this. It was a sobering moment for Broly. All the training he had undergone with Goku, Gohan, and Vegeta had taught him how to control his mind, to keep his rage in check. But seeing Frieza again had triggered something deep within him, a primal instinct to destroy, to avenge his father. For a brief, terrifying moment, Broly had snapped, and the monster within him had resurfaced. Meanwhile, just moments before Broly's dramatic arrival, Lord Beerus and Frieza were in a desperate struggle to find a way off Earth. They had the means to escape. Frieza had confiscated Bulma's ship, a state-of-the-art spacecraft capable of traversing the galaxy. But there was a problem. Konic's domain expansion still surrounded the entire planet, trapping them on Earth with no apparent way out. Beerus was in a dire state. The god of destruction, once so powerful and feared, was now slowly dying. His once majestic form had aged noticeably, the toll of mortality wearing him down at an accelerated rate. In just 45 minutes, it looked as though he had aged several years. His only hope lay in finding Shin, the Supreme Kai of Universe 7, and linking his life force with him to reclaim his lost divinity. But time was running out, and the odds were against them. Frieza, on the other hand, had his own reasons for wanting to escape. He owed Beerus a debt for saving his life, and as much as it pained him to admit it, he needed to repay that debt. But even more than that, Frieza was a survivor. He knew that staying on Earth, trapped within Konic's domain, would spell certain death. They needed to get out, and fast. Beerus's mind was a whirlwind of confusion and concern. He had been locked away in that jar for what felt like an eternity, and when he emerged, everything had changed. Whis, his trusted attendant, was missing, and the angels, beings who were supposed to be neutral, were now acting in ways that defied everything Beerus thought he knew. Konik had attacked him with the intent to kill, something that had never happened before. Angels weren't supposed to take sides, let alone attack gods. The world Beerus had known was unraveling before his eyes, and he couldn't make sense of it. But then, as if the universe itself had answered their unspoken prayers, Broly appeared from the heavens, shattering Konic's domain expansion with a single, devastating blow. The barrier cracked and crumbled, leaving a clear path to freedom. This was their chance, an opportunity they couldn't afford to miss. Without wasting a second, Beerus and Frieza sprang into action. The ship was voice-activated, and as soon as Beerus muttered the coordinates of Shin's planet, the spacecraft roared to life. They shot into outer space, leaving the chaos of Earth behind them, with Beerus injured and weakened but with a glimmer of hope that they might just survive this ordeal. In that tense moment, as the battle continued to rage, both Broly and Abaddon unleashed massive ki blasts simultaneously, their energy crackling through the air like two titanic forces on a collision course. Broly's eyes were ablaze with fury, his only goal clear in his mind: to kill Frieza, the one responsible for his father's death. The moment he sensed Frieza's energy spike inside the fleeing ship, he roared with unbridled rage, and a powerful blast erupted from his mouth, a devastating beam of energy aimed directly at the ship. His intent was clear: destroy the ship and obliterate Frieza in the process. Broly cared nothing for Beerus, who was also on the ship. To him, Beerus was a mere bystander, someone he barely knew and had no attachment to. If it hadn't been for Goku's intervention, Broly would have killed Beerus when they first clashed earlier. But Broly's fury wasn't reserved solely for Beerus. Frieza was his true target, the one who had taken everything from him. And now, with Frieza so close, Broly's primal instincts took over, driving him to unleash his full might. Just as Broly's attack streaked through the sky like a blade, slicing through the very air, Frieza sensed the imminent danger. With the last of his energy reserves, he transformed back into his Black Frieza form, drawing out every ounce of power he had left. The transformation sent shockwaves through the atmosphere, and the sky itself seemed to tremble in response to the sheer power Frieza now wielded. Beerus, sensing the overwhelming blast hurtling toward them, acted on instinct. Despite his weakened state, he placed a trembling hand on Frieza's back, transferring the last remnants of his godly energy into Frieza. The moment he did, Beerus collapsed onto the floor of the ship, unconscious and barely clinging to life. Frieza, now bolstered by Beerus's god energy, leaped onto the top of the ship as it hurtled through the depths of space. His eyes narrowed, his body tense, as he braced himself to counter Broly's devastating attack. The power coursing through him was unlike anything he had ever felt before, a surge that made him feel nearly invincible. But despite this newfound strength, a shadow of doubt lingered in his mind. Would it be enough to stop Broly's monstrous blast? As Frieza stood firm, ready to launch his own powerful counter-attack, something unexpected happened. Just as Broly's attack closed in, another blast appeared out of nowhere, hurtling through the void of space. It was no ordinary blast. The moment it made contact with Broly's energy beam, the air around it seemed to distort and warp. The space itself twisted, and the blast opened up like a black hole, sucking Broly's attack inside before collapsing in on itself, leaving nothing behind. Frieza's eyes widened in shock. "What?" he shouted, completely caught off guard. He had been prepared to face Broly's attack head-on, but now, in front of him, the attack had simply vanished into the void. Frieza looked around, trying to understand what had just happened. Relief flooded through him, though, as he realized that the mysterious blast had saved them. He wasn't sure if his own power would have been enough to stop Broly's attack, especially in his and Beerus's weakened state. The force of the collision between the two blasts had an unexpected side effect. The ship was propelled even further into space, speeding away at an incredible velocity, soon disappearing from view entirely. Frieza could only hold on as the ship rocketed into the distance, grateful for the reprieve but still wary of what had just transpired. Back on Earth, Broly's eyes narrowed as he scanned the sky, his senses attuned to the energy that had interfered with his attack. He knew exactly who it belonged to, none other than the primordial demon god, Abaddon. A fresh wave of anger surged through Broly. Abaddon was another name on his hit list, another being who needed to be dealt with. Broly's attack had been far from ordinary. It was a culmination of his ever-growing power, a demonstration of just how much stronger he had become. Abaddon, sensing the destructive potential of the blast, had realized that if it had struck the ship, it would have killed Beerus, a key figure in their plans. Despite his own immense power, Abaddon knew he couldn't afford to let Beerus die, not when so many of their schemes depended on the god of destruction's survival. Abaddon's actions weren't just a random intervention, he was acutely aware of the delicate balance of power. Even though he was more powerful than the angel Konik, Abaddon couldn't afford to be reckless. He was facing an angel, after all, and angels possessed abilities that were fatal to demons. Like two sides of the same coin, one was always a threat to the other. Abaddon's eyes narrowed as he considered his next move. Letting Beerus escape wasn't ideal, but it was necessary. He knew the nature of destruction energy all too well, and even though Beerus wasn't a demon, he now carried the essence of destruction, a force deeply intertwined with the primordial demon gods. This connection gave Abaddon a unique advantage. Thanks to an ability known as Shadow Void, Abaddon could locate and appear in the shadow of any being who used destruction energy. This power was exclusive to primordial demon gods and allowed them to monitor and protect their own from ambushes or threats. Though Beerus wasn't a full demon, the ritual that had linked him with the Kais had inadvertently turned him, and all other gods of destruction, into subdemons, a lower form of demon. They retained mortality but were now marked by demon blood. This transformation was a safeguard, a bond that linked the gods of destruction to the demon race in ways they could never have anticipated. Just as angels lived perpetually in an ultra-instinct state, the gods of destruction were in a constant state of demon-like energy, always prepared for battle. However, Vegeta was an exception. Unlike the others, Vegeta hadn't undergone the same ritual to gain his destruction energy. Instead, he had tapped into it through sheer willpower and transformation. When in his base form or not using his destruction powers, the demon blood didn't run through his veins. It was only when he unleashed his destruction form that he became a true vessel of demonic energy. What this means for Vegeta is still a mystery, one that will unfold in future battles. But for now, the focus was on Earth, where an explosive confrontation was about to take place. The Z fighters, Piccolo, Android 17, Krillin, and the others stood helpless on the ground, powerless to intervene in the battle that was unfolding high above them. The tension in the air was palpable as Broly, Konik, and Abaddon hovered in the sky, each one brimming with lethal intent. Broly's fury was directed at both Konik and Abaddon, while Konik, still reeling from the loss of Campari, was equally eager to destroy both his enemies. Abaddon, the cunning demon god, had his own plans, and eliminating the other two was a crucial part of it. The three mighty beings stared each other down, their auras clashing and sparking in the sky, creating ripples of energy that spread across the entire planet. Earth was on the brink of destruction. The immense power radiating from the three combatants was tearing the planet apart, causing cataclysmic disasters across the globe. Hurricanes, earthquakes, floods, volcanic eruptions, every disaster imaginable was happening simultaneously, and millions of lives were being lost in the chaos. But the destruction wasn't limited to Earth. The shock waves of energy were rippling across the entire universe. Even distant planets weren't spared from the effects of the battle. On planet Yardrat, where Vegeta was recovering in a healing pod, the ground shook violently. The Yardratians looked to the sky in fear, sensing the immense power that was causing the disturbance. On planet Namek, the elders gathered in their sacred chambers, their faces etched with worry. The Grand Elder reached out with his mind, trying to contact Dende on Earth. Dende, his voice trembled as it echoed in Dende's mind. What is happening on your planet? The very fabric of the universe is trembling. No corner of Universe 7 was safe. The Z-Warriors knew this all too well. The destruction radiating from the clash of Broly, Konik, and Abaddon wasn't just a threat to Earth, it was a menace to the entire universe. Even if they escaped to another planet, Earth and countless other worlds would still suffer the same fate. The only real choice was to move the battle to another universe. But how? The Earth Dragon Balls were out of commission, unable to be used for another 1,000 years. Hope seemed lost until an idea struck them. Planet Namek. Namek had Purunga, the mighty dragon capable of granting 3 wishes. If they could reach Namek in time, they might have a chance to save their universe. But just as the realization dawned on them, something stirred on planet Yardrat. Far away, on Yardrat, Vegeta lay unconscious in one of the Yardratians' healing pods. The battle-worn Sen had been badly injured, the result of a desperate sacrifice by Goku to ensure his escape. Vegeta had crash-landed on Yardrat, where he was taken in by his former mentors, the Yardratians, who placed him in a pod to heal. A week had passed since Vegeta was placed in the pod, and he had been in a deep, unbroken sleep, unaware of the chaos unfolding across the universe. But now, something powerful was calling him back. The overwhelming shockwaves from Broly's unleashed energy, combined with the universe's crumbling state, jolted Vegeta awake. His eyes snapped open, blazing with renewed intensity. Broly, Vegeta roared, his voice echoing through the healing chamber. Without a moment's hesitation, he flexed his muscles, shattering the pod around him. The walls of the pod, made from the strongest metal known to the universe, tungsten, crumpled like paper under his strength. Vegeta stepped out, his usual pride and strength on full display, striking a pose that radiated pure, unyielding power. "I knew you were alive," Vegeta shouted, a fierce grin spreading across his face. For a moment, his heart surged with the thrill of battle, the thought of finally confronting Broly again after so long. But that smile quickly faded as he sensed something else. 2 other powerful energies alongside Broly's. His grin disappeared, replaced by a grim expression as the realization hit him. What? 2 more powerful beings? Vegeta muttered to himself, his brow furrowing in concern. But what truly terrified him was where he sensed Broly's energy radiating from. "The Earth!" he shouted, his heart clenching as the image of his family flashed before his eyes. Bulma, Trunks, Bulla, everyone he cared about. Fear gripped him, something he hadn't felt in a long time. He couldn't let anything happen to them, not while he still had strength left in his body.